Welcome, everyone, to the deep dive. I want you to try and picture this. It's late 1975 in Luang Prabang. There's a thin fog hanging over the Mekong River.
Mm.
The royal palace stands there, right beneath Mount Fauci, but there's this strange, heavy silence around it. It's more than just the changing of the seasons.
It's a sign, isn't it? It's the calm before a historical storm that's about to just sweep away a 600-year-old monarchy.
Exactly. And at the center of that storm is King Savang Vatthana, the last king of Laos. His story, his image, it's often a bit faded now, full of question.
Well, he was carrying the weight of a nation that had become a pawn in, the massive global game of the Cold War.
And that brings us to the core question of our deep dive today. How did this happen? How does a king, a man who by all accounts was righteous and tried to maintain neutrality, lose everything?
To go from a golden throne to a re-education camp in the middle of nowhere, it's a tragic, almost unbelievable fall from grace.
So let's start with the man himself, who was King Savang Vatthana. He ascended the throne in 1959.
Right. And he was very much an intellectual. He'd been educated in France, studied law, literature.
I read he was a fan of Marcel Proust.
He was. I mean, that tells you something about his mindset. Very refined, very conservative, deeply Buddhist, and very tied to ancient Lao traditions.
And that personality reserved traditional, it really becomes a kind of dull-edged sword for him, doesn't it?
A huge one. Because while he's trying to uphold tradition, the rest of Indochina is, on fire with socialist revolution.
He was committed to this idea of neutrality for Laos, as laid out by the Geneva Accords.
He was absolutely committed to it. But it was, frankly, an illusion. In reality, the country was completely fractured. You had three clear factions.
You have the right, backed by the U.S., and the West.
Then the left, the Pathet, Laos, backed by North Vietnam and the Soviet Union.
And then this tiny, struggling neutralist center that the king was trying to hold together.
A center that was getting weaker by the day.
And this is where we get into the secret war, and the statistics are they're horrifying.
They are almost impossible to comprehend. Between 1964 and 1973, the U.S. dropped over 2 million tons of bombs on Laos.
2 million tons. That's more than all the bombs dropped on Europe during the whole of World War II.
Just let that sink in. Over 500,000 bombing missions. It averages out to one plane load of bombs being dropped every 8 minutes.
Every 8 minutes.
Every 8 minutes, 24 hours a day, for 9 straight years, on a country with a population of only about 3 million people at the time.
The scale of that destruction it's hard to even imagine. And that's not just a physical toll, right?
Of course not. It created this deep, deep well of resentment and anger. And for the communists, for the Pathet Lao, it was the perfect propaganda tool.
Because they could point and say, look, you're king, your government.
Yeah.
They can't protect you.
They're weak. They're puppets of Western imperials who are destroying our country. So, ironically, the U.S. bombing campaign became one of the biggest drivers of legitimacy for the communist cause.
And the problems weren't just external. The monarchy was crumbling from within, too. There was this intense family drama at the very heart of it.
A true blood feud. You have to talk about Prince Phonopong.
The Red Prince?
The Red Prince. He was the king's own half-brother, but he had completely embraced communist ideology. He turned his back on the royal court and became the leader of the Pathet Lao.
So while the king is trying to manage this unstable coalition government from the palace in Luang Prabang,
his own brother is out in the mountains, in the caves of Yingzhe, rallying the rural masses, building an army.
It's a battle for legitimacy, really, a fight over who is the true savior of the nation.
And this is where the right-wing government in Vientiane made a fatal mistake. The level of corruption was just staggering.
We're talking about the government led by figures like Prince Mount Oum and General Faminosaban.
Yes. The U.S. was pouring in massive amounts of aid, money, weapons, all to prop up this anti-communist government.
But that aid never reached the majority of the people.
Not at all. It just circulated among a small circle of generals and high-ranking officials in the city. There were reports of this incredibly lavish lifestyle in Vientiane while the countryside was being bombed and people were starving.
That kind of blatant corruption, it's the best fuel for a revolution you could possibly ask for.
It's the perfect fuel. It created this huge gap between the urban elite and the rural majority. People in the countryside felt abandoned, betrayed. They saw the government as a parasite, not a protector.
And they were ready to listen to what the Red Prince was offering.
An ideology that promised equality, land, and an end to foreign interference. When legitimacy is corroded from the inside, it's only a matter of time before the whole structure collapses.
And that collapse came incredibly quickly in 1975.
The dominoes just started to fall. In April, Phnom Penh fell, then Saigon. The domino theory became a reality.
And the U.S. pulled out of the region completely, leaving their allies in Laos totally exposed.
The morale of the Royal Lao Army just evaporated. In May, as the Pathet Lao advanced, the right-wing generals and ministers didn't even put up a fight.
They just fled, ran across the Mekong into Thailand, leaving everyone else behind.
But the king, Savang Vatthana, made a fateful decision. He decided to stay.
He gave this very famous quote. He said, "I will die on Laotian soil among my people."
Which is, incredibly noble and patriotic. You have to admire the sentiment.
But politically?
Politically, it was a trap. By staying, he gave the Pathet Lao exactly what they needed.
Which was a smooth, seemingly legitimate transfer of power. No government in exile, no rallying point for resistance abroad.
Exactly. And so, on December 2nd, 1975, it was all over. A General Assembly of People's Representatives was convened in Vientiane.
And the king was forced to abdicate, ending 600 years of the monarchy.
Just like that, the Lao People's Democratic Republic was declared. And of course, the official documents say he abdicated voluntarily.
A political fiction, obviously. And his brother, the Red Prince Safanavong, became the first president.
While the king was given this meaningless title of Supreme Advisor to the President.
It was a temporary measure, wasn't it? Just to placate the people who still revered the monarchy.
A way to buy time. The new government knew they had to dismantle that reverence slowly. But that advisor role didn't last long.
No. The new government grew more and more paranoid about counter-revolutionary groups trying to rescue the former king.
And that paranoia led to the final tragic act. In March of 1977, the government arrested the king, the queen, the crown prince, and other members of the royal family.
And they were taken to a place called Seminar Camp No. 1.
In Vieng Sai, near the Vietnamese border. It's a remote, harsh, mountainous region, known for being cold, for malaria. Incredibly difficult to get to.
The word seminar, it sounds so harmless.
It's a terrifying euphemism. Seminar was the official term for a re-education camp, a place where people were sent to have their minds and bodies broken through hard labor and political indoctrination.
So you have this elderly king, a scholar who loved literature, forced into manual labor, plowing fields, digging ditches.
Living in a crude grass hut and being subjected to daily Marxist-Leninist brainwashing sessions. It's an almost unimaginable cruelty.
And this wasn't just happening to the royal family.
No, not at all. Tens of thousands of former civil servants, soldiers, and intellectuals were sent to these camps across the country. Estimates suggest that 10, maybe 20,000 people died in them from disease, malnutrition, and abuse.
And the final fate of King Savang Vatthana himself, the details are still shrouded in secrecy. The government has never released an official account.
What we know comes from the accounts of a few survivors. The king was over 70. The conditions, the lack of food, the medical care, his health just deteriorated rapidly.
The most credible accounts suggest he died sometime in early 1980.
Likely from a combination of malaria, malnutrition, and just profound sorrow.
And his burial.
There was no royal ceremony, no golden urn. He was buried in a simple, unmarked grave. The last king of a 600-year-old dynasty, likely just a small mound of earth lost in the forest near Sapao.
The queen and the crown prince also died in the camps. A complete silent end to the royal line.
It really was.
So when we step back and try to synthesize this, if we ask why the monarchy collapsed, it seems there are a few key factors.
I think so. First, you have the brutal geopolitics. Laos was just too important strategically, with the Ho Chi Minh Trail running through it. True neutrality was never really an option.
Second, the absolute failure of the right-wing government. The corruption completely destroyed its legitimacy in the eyes of its own people.
Third, the Pathet Lao ran a much more effective propaganda campaign. They connected with the rural population on issues of nationalism and equality in a way the royal government never could.
And finally, the king's own personality. Honorable, yes, but his style of compromise and adherence to protocol was just no match for the brutal, rule-breaking politics of a revolution.
He was playing chess while his opponents were flipping the board over. The collapse wasn't sudden. It was the result of decades of internal decay and external pressure.
Today, the Royal Palace in Luang Prabang is a national museum. You can go and see the Golden Throne. It's still there.
But it's empty.
A silent reminder of a history that isn't so far in the past. Learning about this isn't about opening old wounds.
No, it's about understanding the true, incredibly high cost of things we take for granted, like peace and sovereignty.
And before we end our deep dive today, we wanted to leave you with one final thought to consider.
The history of Laos shows us, with heartbreaking clarity, what can happen when a nation lacks true unity and its leaders lack real power. They become vulnerable to the powerful currents of change. History is written with tears and blood. It's our job to read it with wisdom, to ensure that such tragedies are not repeated.